Two sessions left. Today is conflict. Next week is leadership. And several items for today. Erin, you get an overhead shot of the chapter overview that's on the overhead camera. Just tighten it up a bit. There, perfect. Can you read that on your monitors at all?
Yes.
Okay. Just barely? Oh, all right. Well then, just leave it the way it is, and the folks at the distance sites can sit close to their monitors. But I just want to give you an idea of where we're headed with this particular module. And I have two film scenes. The one is from Fried Green Tomatoes, and the other is from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And I think both are excellent renditions of some of the aspects of conflict that I would like to emphasize with you. Also, we will do the conflict orientations exercise as of this morning, about 11:30ish. Probably got about 7 or 8 from this class. You tend to wait to do it, and there's no problem with that, as I have repeatedly said, but I wanted to see if there were any patterns for you folks compared to the other two classes. But we we'll define conflict in a moment, and I also will want to get your impression of conflict without any reference to the exercise or to any chapter content. But we distinguish between conflict that is good and conflict that is bad for an organization, which right away may impress you as an unusual way to look at it. And then we take a look at levels and types of conflict, probably briefly because the text does the job and you can read it and we don't have to necessarily heavily emphasize it. Of great importance in understanding conflict is this notion of conflict episodes. We're going to spend quite a bit of time with that, breaking it down into the 6 parts and the way in which an episode unfolds. Then there are conflict frames and orientations, and we'll do that after the break as part of the exercise. And then a separate section describes what is called latent conflict, which, as it says here, is the source of conflict in organizations. And this is a fairly powerful set of ideas that can quickly give us insights as to what we might encounter as conflict. And that looks like Ted. That's Santa Fe, I'm quite sure. Then a conflict management module, which includes 2 parts to it, reducing and increasing conflict. So that's the nature of Module 12 and OB Chapter 11, and it's fairly straightforward, I think. And of course, that's all up to you. Okay, I hope we have a marker. Yes. Okay, Erin, you can go take the overhead off and go full screen on me, please. Okay. Let's make sure this is going to run. Yes. What is this, as far as you are concerned? What do you immediately think of in looking at the word? And I want every one of you to comment, and I'll start over on the right.
2 opposing ideas clashing with each other.
Okay. I'm going to summarize it as just that's the essence of 2 parts of your description. Yes, sir.
A discrepancy between 2 ideas.
Discrepancy. I'm not going to say you're right or wrong. I just want, this is like a word association, trying to capture what you associate with it, so I can, in a sense, calibrate the way you think about it. You, sir?
Just a problem.
Over here, sir?
Hostility.
Okay. Breathing these things. Ma'am?
Disagreement.
And then to the left?
I'm still thinking, so I was going to say the one she just said.
Okay, we'll come back to you. challenging my spelling here. Back row, lights shining straight on.
I was gonna say, like, I'm not getting along.
Next.
I was gonna say differences.
Differences.
A dispute?
Dispute. To the right.
An argument?
Argument. And then finally, the person who is thinking.
Trouble.
Trouble. Okay. Notice there is a variation in the strength with which you use a word to describe conflict. When you say battle, that's like a war.
Yeah.
You like it?
No. Conflict.
Okay. I have to be careful. I don't want to pass any judgments yet. I would like us to get into this a little bit more deeply. Words like discrepancy and differences, quite mild in expressing conflict. It just says there's a difference. A battle is a war and a fight. And I'm assuming that's this synonym that you meant for this. Problem and opposition is softer compared to clashing. And this says dispute, you can read it, and the like. Now, the definition of conflict that we use, I'm going to go to the right, Aaron, and I'll come back. You can stay there. I just want to check the way the definition reads. The first sentence on page 256 reads, conflict is doubt or questioning, opposition, incompatible behavior, controversy, or antagonistic interaction. Notice how I wrote that. It starts with something mild, like questioning, and builds up to something a bit more strong, antagonistic interaction, which is exactly what you did with the words here. And I have it phrased that way deliberately because we can start on the far left and say there are disagreements. Now that's fairly mild. This does not necessarily mean people are screaming at each other. They simply disagree about something and they have a discussion, and I could add discussion. Get out to the far right. The most severe, I hope I spelled this right, I didn't bother to look it up. Severe reaction we can have is annihilation of opponent. And that certainly is what happens in war. And it is what happens in battle when it gets carried to an extreme. Well, in organizational conflict, we don't quite endorse doing this. Me standing here and suggesting that if you have a dispute with someone, shoot the bugger. I can't, my values wouldn't allow me to say that. And I think it would be a terrible thing to say in this context. So we'll take conflict as having a broad range from the fairly mild disagreements all the way up to something short of annihilation of opponent. And we'll see as we get into the chapter that the chapter builds up in this fashion and builds upon it builds up in a way that allows you to see the different versions of conflict. Okay. Now, thanks, Aaron. I moved faster than the camera did. Now, note there is a section that says functional and dysfunctional conflict, and that might strike you as really odd because at least half of you, or maybe a third, have used strong, potentially negative words to describe conflict. Now, can you make a case, because of what you've said, can any of you make a case for functional conflict in an organization? And I'm assuming you know what that means. It comes from chapter 1. That means conflict is good. Yes?
Like, if you have a project and you have so many ideas, but you can only run with a certain one, you
part of it. And why is that functional? Why is it good?
Because it helps you end up with the best possible outcome by
Okay.
taking all your options.
And is that, do you perceive that as better than the people in the group simply saying, oh, everything's fine? Thinking of yourselves as student teams when you're working on projects, trying to design something and so on, you would have the conflict leading to new ideas. Yes, sir?
Another way that I like to associate with it would be compromise, like in a functional conflict situation, like compromise. Like you have to compromise with the ideas of everyone in the group in order to get to your goal.
Okay, compromise has a specific meaning within the theories of conflict, and we'll see. That's splitting the differences. And we'll see, we'll look at that carefully, because that's the one item on the experiential exercise that I would like you to do, as well as we can get into it. Now here's the levels and types of conflict. We can say that there is conflict within the organization, which we call intra-organization conflict. We also distinguish that, this is a brand new copy, so it's sticking, from interpersonal conflict. Most of the conflict I think that you are thinking about is interpersonal conflict, like within a group, and between yourself and a coworker, yourself and a supervisor, or within a student group. And last, there is inter-organization conflict, which means conflict between organizations. You may call that competition, and you can, and that's okay, but organizations that are in the same field of activity could engage in conflict. Now the important part, of all of this, if we get a tight shot, Aaron, figure 11.1. You can come in a bit tighter and then open it up. All right, this is on page 259. And what I want to do with this is walk you through a simple version and then make it more complex. Every box on here counts, and each box has a definition that's in the text. Please know this well. It's useful. I know it's useful. I would like you to become persuaded that it's useful and perhaps even use it. We start out with something called latent conflict. And latent conflict simply lurks about in an organization. And if you know anything about old film photography, when you exposed a piece of film, and maybe with all the digital stuff now, you don't even use film, but when you expose a piece of film, it gets on the surface of the film what is called a latent image. When that film is processed in a series of chemicals by the specifications of the filmmaker, the latent image becomes manifest, or you can see it. That is the same, metaphorically, exactly what's going on here with latent conflict leading to manifest conflict. Ignore for the moment the two boxes on the left and the right of the figure. We'll come to that. Just think of the center flow. Latent conflict triggers manifest conflict. Latent conflict has to be present in order for manifest conflict to occur. Manifest, as a word, simply means you can see it. It's apparent. It's present. Now, what is latent conflict in organizations? Stuff like scarce resources. At the Anderson School, well, we have the new Johnson Center, whatever that thing is called, or Jackson, I guess, is the student